Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Gurudeva, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, great masters, we come to you and offer our devotion at your feet. Help us to realize your presence within us at all times. Help us to feel you befriending us so that we are never alone. And help us to feel your love holding us, keeping us safe, keeping us uplifted, and always filled with your joy. Om, peace. Amen.
In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. There my soul longs to be. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. There my soul longs to be. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. There my soul longs to be. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. 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 In this world, In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be. There my soul longs to be. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me.
Let's meditate together now for just a few minutes, knowing that we just have a few minutes to go deep. Listen and take in the line of this chant that says, "There my soul longs to be." Where is there truly loving love? Where is there purely loving me? There my soul longs to be. Let's just keep our eyes uplifted, heart wide open, spine straight, and go deep with the words of that chant. So, Swamiji has, along with these secrets, offered one piece of his music that he felt was significant in terms of whatever the teaching is that he's trying to bring to us for this, with this secret of emotional healing. The name of this song of his is "Love is the Search for One's Own Self." And there's a woman who is now part of our congregation. Actually, she's teaching in Living Wisdom School, whose name is Suryani. She's a wonderful dancer, and she created this piece for something that we did here, also to this piece of music. So we decided to show it tonight instead of having any live music. So please enjoy Suryani dancing to "Love is the Search for One's Own Self." I'm going to ask somebody to send me an email and remind me to write to Suryani. Wasn't that beautiful? That was just really lovely. Somehow tonight I was really able to appreciate in a deeper way than ever, maybe because I'm so engrossed with these readings now, but the depth of interpretive dance when it's done well, the way it just speaks to us. Suryani will be back one more time in... Was I not on? Oh dear, I've been talking to myself for 5 minutes, or 3 minutes, or a minute, whatever. Anyway, I thought that was so lovely, and I was just saying that very often I'm watching under other circumstances, but because I'm so engrossed with this little book and each secret and the depth of meaning in each secret, I was actually able to appreciate in a new way how profound interpretive dance can be when somebody's tuned in and attuned to the music and the teachings, really, is what it is. So much beauty in that. I also wanted to comment, I think that the chant that Lakshmi played, "In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, no one knows how to love me. Where is there truly loving love? Where is there purely loving me? There my soul longs to be." It is such a beautiful chant. And I have had so many people come up to me over the years and tell me how much they don't like that chant. And I've always known why, but just tonight, because one of the phrases that came to me as I was thinking about this talk was that huge space between ego familiarity and soul remembrance. Perhaps I've heard Swamiji say that. It would sound like something he would say, or Master. But for people who come to a Sunday service or wherever they would come and they would hear that, if they're living from that place of ego and ego familiarity, they would hate that song. I could really hear it tonight. In this world, no one can love me. It could just feel so sad, like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to be loved. But then you say, where is there truly loving me? There my soul longs to be. And for those of us who are thirsting for that place of soul remembrance, that pure, magnificent, unconditional love of God, it's just so beautiful. It's like, of course, that's where we would long to be. And I was listening to it tonight because, of course, I shouldn't say of course, maybe some of you don't know, but the reading for tonight is on loneliness. And the truth is, when you're in this world and you're longing to know God, it can be so lonely, so very lonely. I was thinking as I was driving over here, when are the times in my life where I have felt lonely? Because I don't often feel that. I don't even often have a deep feeling about being alone, which is something it's a very different state of being, because often we are alone, and often we're even alone with our beliefs, with our longings, with anything, with many things. But that's very different than feeling lonely. That sense of being lonely just carries with it such a sadness. And I was thinking, when did I last feel lonely, and what was that about? And I want to be able to share it with you, but I don't want to give too many clues. I don't want you to know who I'm talking about. But I remember not all that long ago coming to someone hoping to be, clearly needing, it wasn't even a hope, but needing to be held a little in the midst of all of the turmoil of the last months, and finding none of that there, but rather in this other person, their perfect need. There was nothing wrong with it, but the need to have the moment be about them. So there I was with a very dear friend, and I just felt so lonely, really lonely. A sadness came over me, and I remember as I was driving away from that situation, saying to myself, how are you going to get beyond this state of loneliness? Because we could have such a longing, most of us do in fact, I'll talk a lot about it, to be loved unconditionally, to be seen. I mean, at a more simple level, I would say, it's just to be noticed, to be adored, to be sought after, to be thought of as being smart or pretty. Any of those things, probably most of us have been there, even in this very life. So it doesn't matter what it is, it's just that the depth of the desire, or the height of the desire, when it's a longing to have your soul be seen, to be known at that soul level. And if that's not coming, mostly because we're not looking in the right direction or in the right place, it's just the saddest feeling. And I remember I said to myself as I was driving away, you get together with Master and Swamiji right now. You just ask them to love you. I was driving, but it was like a real prayer demand. I think many of you have heard me say this, or at least some of you, and it's still true. The very last thing I do every night, every single night, no matter where I've been, what I've been doing, what the circumstances are, right before I fall asleep, is I always ask Master to put his arms around me and hold me, and just to go to sleep in those loving arms. And that's what I was looking for that day. It was very clear to me that if I was looking for that kind of purely loving love, if I was looking for that outside, I was not going to find it. And I was going to continue feeling lonely. You can call this sad, or you can accept it for what it is, realize it for what it is. There are very few souls in bodies in any of our lifetimes who can love us with that kind of pure love. That means completely outside of themselves. Most of the time, when people love one another, or what they say is loving one another, there's a huge gain in it for them. Even sometimes we're not aware of it, but we're giving people things, we're honoring something in them, we're holding them close to us. It has to do with something we're getting. Well, when you're on the other side of that, you know someplace deep inside of you that it's not really all about you. And it leaves you feeling lonely. It leaves you feeling the truth of what is actually happening. And it's very hard to find that in this life, in this state of duality in which we live. I'd like to read before I go on and keep talking. I want to read to you, Swamiji gave 2 weeks to the topic of loneliness. We're only going to do it for this 1 week. But I wanted to read to you the 2 secrets that he wrote. So he's writing to us, remember, saying, this is how you can transcend loneliness. That's what he's saying. So the first one is, the secret of overcoming loneliness is to develop the company of inner friends, creative thoughts, high ideals, and noble aspirations. Visualize your mind as a nation and its thought population as happy, self-motivated citizens. It's very clever what he's saying, but he's saying develop company of inner friends. And then he goes on to say, who are these friends? What would they look like? These friends that you're developing, creative thoughts, high ideals, and noble aspirations. Visualize your mind as a nation. Your mind is the whole nation. That's something that's inside of us. He doesn't say, look outside. Visualize your mind as a nation and its thought population, right? That means all of its thoughts as happy, self-motivated citizens. So it's everything within us, and it's high ideals, creative thoughts, noble aspirations, self-motivated citizens, that our thoughts are self-motivated. Everything about this is so uplifted, but it's all within us. And Swamiji's saying, do that for yourself. This is not so obvious as some of the other ones. So later, if you have a moment, take out that little book or look at it online, however you're doing that, and read that again, because it's rich, it's beautiful. And as in everything Swamiji says, it's the pure truth and it's the whole truth. If you can do that, if you're willing to do that, so we can do it, but if we're willing to do it, then you will not feel lonely. So again, that kind of guidance, as I was driving away from that friend of mine, to say, Master and Swamiji, you come right here, be with me, knowing there are very few ways, very few, away from a lot of these emotions. And we have to decide, are we willing to do it? In a few minutes, I'm going to speak about why that's challenging. The second week says, the secret of overcoming loneliness is to practice the presence of God as Heavenly Father or Divine Mother and share with Him every thought, every feeling, every action. Practice the presence of God as Heavenly Father or Divine Mother and share with Him or her, I'll add, Swamiji didn't say that, every thought, every feeling, and every action. It's interesting when you let that in. He's really saying, be constantly in the presence of the divine, constantly. And I have felt this in my own life, and I'll bet many of you have too. So many times where I'm feeling myself being resistant or struggling with something I need to do for any number of reasons. I might need to do something that I don't really want to do. But as soon as I say, hey, Master, how about if you come with me? Let's go do this. I mean, the humorful side of it that I've shared so often is my partner, who's very into cars. I mean, really into cars. And I would say that going to a car show would be pretty low down on my list of things I'd love to do with my free time. It's nothing I would just pick up any morning. I do say it for him, So, and I've said many times, hey, sweetie, would you like to go to a car show today? You know, trying to be with him. But I certainly wouldn't take myself there. But on the way to every one of those car shows, I've said to him, Master, it's you and me. We're going to get into these cars. And you know, it's much more fun when you have Master along on a trip, or when you have Swamiji along on a trip, real or just in your mind. So the more that we can share with these great souls, the more that we keep our minds focused on them, noble aspirations, the less lonely we are, no matter where we have to go, no matter what we have to do. It's interesting, I've mentioned this before, I think even in this course, just crossed my mind again. I've had this obsession my whole life with studying the Holocaust. And there's a lot I could say about that, but it's not relevant here. But I love to read about the stories of the people who made it. They made it out of there, or they made it to a place of highly elevated consciousness, even if they then died there and somebody else was telling their story. But always, I mean always, 100% of the time, they made it by elevating their thoughts, by expanding their consciousness. It wasn't always as we might think of it, though very often it was about God, and very often it was people finding God in those circumstances. Even if they had been religious Jews or other people, they didn't really have a relationship with God, as is often true in religion, as we know. But in these concentration camps, or many of the other horrible places that they were made to live, they would find God. They would have an experience of the divine, or they would love the other people there so deeply and so fully that their hearts would open. And there's always been something so captivating about that for me, because that's the way that we save our lives. If we just keep trying to live in terms of the circumstances that are outside of ourselves, completely outside of ourselves, and find satisfaction there, whether it's in this world no one can love me, or it's always waiting to get out of the concentration camp to find that deep, abiding inner peace and love. We don't make it that way. And you can think of the most simple example or the most profound example. It doesn't matter. What we're talking about here, when I thought, before I read Swamiji's how do we, overcome loneliness, I was thinking of, why do we get lonely? Almost always it's because we want the situation to be different than what it is. We've moved away from that place of acceptance of what is actually happening right here, right now, as the sum total of all we need. We've forgotten that what's in front of us is perfect, and it can be, even if we can't hold that thought, that it's absolutely perfect for us, that everything that comes to us is karmically, therefore magnetically drawn to us. There, I've said it so many times, there can't be a mistake. But even if one cannot wrap their mind around that yet, then we could say, okay, this is where I am. How am I going to make the very best of it? What can I do here that would be positive, that might help me feel uplifted, more whole with this situation as it is? Because as soon as we want it to be something else, we feel isolated and we really feel alone. As soon as we want, as in my instance, for a person or people to be treating us differently than how they're treating us, then we feel alone. We feel lonely. We are alone, by the way. This is why it's so interesting that for many people, and people can understand this even before they're ready to grasp it at its highest spiritual level or meaning, that people have understood that in a crowd of people at a party or having dinner with somebody that you're not connecting with, or in the middle of a fight with your partner, that you feel more lonely than you do when you're alone. What is that? But many people have had that feeling. And it's not even when you know, I'm in some place I don't belong, I'm with the wrong people. Sometimes even before you know that. Swamiji's example in something he had written, he talks about how lonely kings or rulers of lands can be. They have their whole kingdom in one way or another. And in that kingdom, many people adoring them at a very human level, though. And they're lonely. They feel lonely much of the time because nothing short of feeling that complete love of God, nothing short of that has us really feel not lonely. And it's interesting, even if for moments you love what you're doing and you're crazy about the person that you're with and you experience a kind of joy in the moment, happiness at least, and of course life is hopefully for many of us, most of us, filled with some of those moments. But as soon as you feel the love of God, the truth and the purity of the love of God, then you realize how most of the moments that we call happiness pale in comparison. And this is what Swamiji's speaking to. He's not speaking to going out with a couple friends and really having a nice evening, or we could go on and on. He's talking about the longing, the deep longing of the soul. So what I called before soul remembrance. We very often try and live life at the periphery. All of us, we've been in this situation for long periods of time where we're looking outside of ourselves to be fulfilled. And the further out we get, no matter how much money there is, no matter how beautiful the home is, no matter what, the further away from our center that we get, the more likely it is that loneliness will come and grab us. But it's not easy to do what we need to do from this place of the human condition, which is inherently, from its very inception and for every moment going forward, filled with dualities. We live in a state of duality, of a dual nature. With everything, there's always a plus and a minus, a good and a bad, a better and a worse, a less and a more, about everything other than those few precious moments when we come right to the center. And it's interesting because we're all looking for happiness. So we could ask ourselves, why don't we all just do what we need to do and come inside? Why aren't people just beating down the doors of Ananda to learn to meditate and to be here? Of course, I'm preaching to the choir because you are here. I haven't heard from Bhajana, who's in Brazil, who's 5 hours ahead, but she says, I'm waiting up for the class. So those of you who are hearing this right this moment, you are here. But why aren't we always here? Why aren't more people here? What happens when we stray which we all do. If we didn't, we just simply wouldn't still be in these bodies. What is that about? We all want happiness. Every person would say that. And yet, that inward and upward journey is so hard. We are habituated, every one of us. We keep, sometimes before we catch ourselves, we're looking in the wrong direction to feel fulfilled, again, to feel seen and really heard. From, again, I've said it, but from the most simple ways. I always hate to say these things to people because then I think they, like me, because I'm this way, because I know these words I'm about to say to you, will become obsessed with it. But you watch how many times you share something with somebody and they say to you, really, tell me more. Or I'm so interested in what that experience is like for you. Tell me more about it. No, not very often. Mostly, as soon as you share something with somebody, they say, I know exactly what you mean. And they're talking about themselves again. It's simply what happens. So that tendency is so natural to be doing that and to be living outside, in large part because of habit. And that habit, which is all a part of the divine, but it's a kind of downward, outward pulling habit. Swamiji says in his, I read this first in the course, sorry, I'm blocking on the name of the year-long course that he wrote, the 26 lessons. Material Success course, thank you. Yeah, I remember when I first read it in there, I'm sure he'd said it before then, but it's the first time I read it where he said habit is almost always, I think in there he might have said always, but he went on to qualify it a little bit, a downward pulling, a negative tendency, because it's unconscious, it's unthought out. So what does it take for us to get really conscious and to decide to step into this journey to be closer to God, closer to divine love? Interestingly, what we find when we do that is that even though we don't just make that decision and then suddenly be free of those habits or that desire to stay outside of ourselves. Usually it doesn't happen like that. But with every bit of effort that we make, Swamiji says very sweetly in something that he wrote here, I'm going to paraphrase it. It's not in this book. It's just something that I read that he was, I think he was writing about something else, but it so reminded me of this that I printed it out for myself. But he says, it's not like you work and work and work and work and then you get to the end and there's a tiny little bit of light there. No, that's not what it is. We work means we put out energy. We put in effort. We strive to do better on our paths. And then we never quite go back to where we were. So each time we try hard, we're moving into a little more light. And then that very light, even if it's almost imperceptible at times, sort of shines on our path. And we then see where to take our next steps. So we're always making progress as long as we're making the effort. And the effort is always about drawing that energy in and working that energy as it goes up our spine, because that's where joy is. That's where true happiness is. That's where pure love is. This is actually what is meant when all of these great teachers keep telling us, God is love. That's a very hard 3 words to make any sense of, because it doesn't mean God's falling in love with somebody else. It doesn't mean, oh, you've found God. It doesn't mean it's loving a spectacular meal. It doesn't mean any of that. It means when you've made certain progress so that in a moment you find yourself in an absolutely purely loving state. Purely loving state. And it's just one of those phrases, places, experiences that you just know when you're there. You can't, it's beyond the rational mind. So it's very hard to explain, but you just keep moving forward, heart wide open, ready, remembering that everything that we're longing for is in here. And then when we reach too far out, we inevitably lose our balance. We're out of bounds out there, but not when we come inside. And then suddenly, in a moment, you're having an experience of divine love, and you know it. And I know it's true for at least some of you, because at least some of you have written to me about it. And you've talked about this extraordinary experience of love, like nothing you've ever experienced in your life before. And you write this letter, I know that, Swamiji says it, love just wants to share itself. It's really interesting for the most part. As soon as we put words to it, we've diminished it. Not 100% of the time, not when you come to somebody who has also experienced the source of that love. Then you find yourselves just going deep inside and having the experience together in the same moment. But if you try and say to any old friend, oh my God, you won't believe it, that's the truth. They won't believe it. They won't even understand it. And it's in that place, why am I talking about that so much? Because that's where there is no loneliness. That's what Swamiji means when he says to practice the presence of God and share with him every thought, every feeling, every action. And if we actually did that, we would be with God. That's what it means, every thought, feeling, and action. Swamiji's just saying in some simple little way that we can understand the words. Just be with God all the time. But here's the important piece of this. We just begin by practicing as often as we can remember. And you do it your way. For me, it's meant putting little stickies up on my computer, having things that pop up on my cell phone. I remember when I was in medical training, you always had to carry a clipboard because, I'd be following 18 to 25 patients who were really sick in the hospital. Who can remember all that, right? But right at the top of my clipboard, always, was something about God. And right below that, written, stop and pray before you walk into any patient's room. Ask God to go in with you. Well, I'm a long way out of training, and I'm not fully realized yet, but I'm a lot further down that road than I was in those years. It's a practice. It's a spiritual practice. Just practice being with God. And when you're feeling lonely, and I've said this about so many other of the emotions, they have an amazing magnetism to them themselves. It's not like magnetism. We speak about magnetism all the time in a very positive way. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. All of you have heard that. But it's not like it's always magnetically drawing us up. We can be pretty willful in the wrong direction. We can put a lot of energy into negativity. So that can bring to us a magnetism within us and draw to us things that are not that good for ourselves. But as long as we're moving in the right direction and we just keep little bit by little bit, oh wait, I forgot. Oh yeah, I'm going to do it. Look at that. This person didn't give me what I want. And I remembered, because I've been practicing, just go right to Master. Shanti, I said to myself, just go right to Master. And I don't mean this to sound trite. It was not trite. Instantly, I felt less lonely. Nothing changed in the outside. This is what it's so important to hear. We cannot solve our problems out there. We can't feel less lonely. We won't feel less depressed. Any and all of what we're talking about. It's never out there, but we're just learning all of these little tools that are going to help us. In the end, every one of these secrets is taking us to the same place. It's taking us to that place where we're sharing every thought, every feeling, every action with God. Really, it's taking us into a state of deeper and deeper and deeper communion with the divine. And we have to trust Swamiji, and I've had enough of my own experiences, I hope some of you had too, that I believe it. I have great faith in it. I know it to be true, that when I can remember to do that, I'm not lonely, I'm not depressed, I'm not anxious, I'm not discouraged, I'm none of these things. It's impossible because we're moving from a state of duality to a state of unity. And that state of unity means that we are one with God. So, we just all remember, if you're watching me as partners, remind each other, you're feeling lonely, move closer to God. So, we're going to turn this screen back on, and I'm going to look at it every once in a while, which will feel like I'm looking away from you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? It's always very rich when you do. You can either type in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, or just unmute yourself and speak. Well, at least a lot of you are coming back. Hello. You can't see, oh yeah, you can see it too. A lot of their screens opening. Any questions or comments? Nothing in the chat box, second. Okay. All right, friends. We'll sign off then. You enjoy your evening. Thank you for being with us. I love these moments, this hour every other week. It's come to be very precious for me, so I hope you're all feeling that as well. God bless you all.